I'm really hoping that everybody has got themselves a nice drink and they are going to be comfortable for the next short piece of time. I'm going to be sharing some great ideas with you as part of the webinar. I am aware that we've had a few people contact us just to ask for that they're going to be a few moments late. So please do take this time now, everyone, just to make sure you've got yourself something nice and cold to drink, or something hot to drink, of course, and that you're just ready for some relaxing time to have a little listen to some of the information I'm going to share with you. I'm hoping everybody is okay to start in just a couple of minutes or so. I'm just conscious that for some schools they've only just finished, and I know that everyone's very busy and it's moving time, so I don't want to waste your time, but I would like to give an opportunity for those people that would like to join us to join us. So I'm going to start in just a couple of moments. Thank you, though, for those of you that have joined us already. It is wonderful to see you all. Don't be camera shy. Feel free to put your cameras on. It's always nice for me to see who I'm talking to. And having a nice smile, of course, always makes life easier. Okay. Okay, thanks, Omar. That's some lovely ideas. As Aurora's already said, everybody, if you do have any questions, please do put them into the chat function. I may not answer them immediately, but I will certainly come back to them as we go. All right, I'll build in some time to be able to do that. Oh, did that go wrong? No, that's working. Aurora's just very kindly put into the chat function the link that will help you to be able to identify the courses that I'm going to be sharing with you today. Further information can all be found using that chat function. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for providing that. All right. Maybe we'll make a slow start. It's hopefully the technical is not going to let us down today. All right. Okay. All right. So something that is very important to say as well is that the webinar will be recorded today. So please feel free to so they can experience some of the information that we're going to be sharing this afternoon. So a very civil. I am based in the UK and am delighted to travel the world to share my understanding of what I across the world, sharing this to be able to give ideas to educators, pupils, teachers and teachers, and it's always wonderful to be able to share some of my experiences with everybody else. How I always work is I like to facilitate loads of ideas and information, and I'm delighted to be sharing with you some of these courses that I'll be delivering for Infinite Learning, and thank you to Infinite Learning for to be able to share some of my ideas in a lot more depth. So today we're going to have a quick look at this express version of inclusion and pedagogy. And we use this word pedagogy quite a lot. And it's basically about ways that we learn. And as educators, we are teaching, we are delivering education all of the time. And it is delighted that we'll be able to share some of this with you. I think we have a few other people joining us now. A very good afternoon to those guys that are just joining us. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay, so as I've explained, I am George Athanasiou, and today we're going to go on a bit of a tour to discovering a little bit about who I am and what my credibility is all about. So understanding some of my credentials that bring me to this position today. I would also like to give you some ideas, some tips about ways that you can develop your own pedagogy. So the ways that you are delivering education in your classes. We're going to have a quick look at inclusive strategies, and then we're going to talk about how we understand young people, how we understand our students. I'm conscious that on the call today, there'll be some people that will be nursery practitioners, and there'll be some people that will be practitioners working alongside much older students. Their first a pleasure to welcome everybody. We've had a few more people join. Hi everyone, welcome. I'm George Athanasiou, based in the UK. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. So I started as a teacher. I worked my way through the leadership team and became a head teacher, one of the youngest head teachers in the United Kingdom, which I'm very proud of. I was a head teacher for many years, and then I worked for my local authority, our local authority board, who would send me into schools that were failing, would send me into schools that were absolutely thriving, that needed something else. And at this point in my career, I started to understand ways that schools were operating, and it gave me that depth of knowledge. It allowed me to understand my own learning and understand how schools function. I then moved into an academy trust looking after 23 schools. I was director of learning for them, which was lots and lots of fun. And then it occurred to me one day that really I've got a lot of ideas that I don't want to work for somebody. I want to be my own boss. So I created my own company of Education According to George. And what Education According to George does is it gives me the opportunities now to work with companies and with schools. So I can now compare my experiences and my skills across a variety of different industries. It affords me to work with the wonderful companies like Infinite Learning, who are then able to share my expertise and give me opportunities and platforms to deliver and offer courses. I focus my education and my learning on these four main areas. So my specialisms are in leadership, well-being, inclusion, and pedagogy. And these are the four areas that I generally help schools. Intertwined within these, artificial intelligence as well, where artificial intelligence can support leadership, can support well-being, inclusion, pedagogy, etc., etc. And I will build that into the courses as I deliver them. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I've had a few more people join us. Thank you. Nice to see you all. Please don't be camera shy. It is really nice for me to be able to see faces as well. Okay, so then let's start at the beginning. Cherie, tell me about where your energy is. This is always really helpful for me, and please just add in a number into the chat function as to where your energy is today. I'm sure you've all had a really busy day in the classroom, in the office, young people, having to use all of your mindset. But tell me a little bit about where your energy is. Please just put this into that chat function. You might be a number one where actually you're really struggling. You are moving forward. You are trying to engage, and it's actually just really difficult because you're feeling so overwhelmed. Or are you, of course, somebody right at the other end of my scale here, maybe a 10 where you're absolutely loving life at the moment, and you're on top of the world. If only we could bottle your energy and sell it. So you may be a number that's not listed on my screen, but would be between. So just pop into the chat a little bit about where you are. Where are you feeling? How are you going to be participating in today's wonderful webinar? Okay, right, let's see what we've got then. So I can see that somebody here is on a 5. Oh gosh, I better work a little bit harder with you, making sure that you're really achieving. Omar's a 10. Omar, that's fantastic to hear. Paola's a 7. Nice to see you on the call, Paola. Welcome aboard. Aurora's a 6. Oh, that might be because I know your daughter's not been very well, Aurora. I hope she gets better And when we start to understand this as educators, it can be a little bit easier to be successful during a day. When we start to balance as educators, we're about to appear in front of loads of children, loads of young people, and inspire them through the day. Actually, if we're only feeling maybe a 3 or a 4 out of 10, that's really quite a hard task, isn't it? That's quite a tough gig to achieve. So great. Thank you so much, everybody, for letting me know where your energies are. Okay, now we're going to be looking today at inclusion and pedagogy, and this is ultimately the education system. This is the education system in the UK, in Africa, in Antarctica, in any part of the world. What schools and education systems seem same function, the same standardized assessments to ensure that this is the fairest way of dealing with this. Now, this is quite a tough operation, right? When we're looking at this style, when we're looking at actually the young people that we deliver, that we educate, that they all function in completely different ways. So when I look at this pictogram here, I'm always feeling for the poor goldfish. And I always ask my delegates in any training that I do about how do we make this the fairest it possibly can be so that every one of these people, every one of these animals can be successful in the tree. Now, somebody once said to me, oh, you could add a tube that goes from the goldfish bowl and that swims to the top. And when we're starting to think about inclusion, yeah, that's a great way. We could offer equipment. We could think about ways that the system can support the individuals. But then somebody said to me, well, why don't you just cut the tree shorter? Why do we always have to change the person? Why don't we change the environment? And that really got me thinking about inclusive practice. Why do we assume that it's the young people that need to change? Why is it the students that need to be changing? What about we actually adapt our education, we adapt our system to suit the needs of everybody else? Now, in hindsight, that seems a really straightforward thing to suggest, but there is so much policy and procedure. So this is where a very skilled teacher, much like I'm sure everyone on this call today, a very skilled teacher will be able to adapt their education, their lessons, their learning to drive the education system and ensure that everybody is successful. Okay, that makes some sense to you. Now, let's have a little quick think about some other ways that we make our education and our systems far fairer, far more successful. Please put into the chat anything that you feel would be really helpful at this point. Any comments or any ideas to really strengthen the point that I'm trying to make here. In the UK, what seems to happen is we would say, oh yes, this little mouse might struggle to climb up this tree. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an adult next to them and they're going to support. Now that can actually just take away all of the independence, can't it? From that young person. So we haven't got any comments in the chat at the moment, which is marvelous because I'm going to share some ideas a little bit about ways that we can understand our young people. When we understand young people, we understand their functionality, that then helps us to drive forward and ensure that they are successful in our lessons. Helps us to adapt our learning and teaching, and it helps us to adapt our thoughts. Okay, now before I continue, let me just will have been organised by Infinite Learning. Now, we've got one that's coming up very, very soon, actually, on the 3rd of November. And this one is the Teaching with Confidence. These are a bank of simple strategies to create a more positive classroom, especially if you're a teacher that's maybe been teaching for a while and you're teaching the same curriculum, you're teaching the similar ideas, and you think, I want to shake things up a little bit. I really want to inspire my learners. I want to inspire the education that goes on in my workspace. So this course would be perfect for you. in the sense that it will give you that little bit of energy and that little lift that you may just want to think about. Now, we've all got pupils in our classrooms that can sometimes cause us just to think a little bit more. And we I've come across these types of behavior before. I hadn't realized that, this pupil is going to be so disrespectful, or I need to understand the context of this pupil. Now, the second course that I want to share with you today is called it's called How to Re-engage Students and Manage Behavior when it disrupts the learning. And I'm going to share some ideas and some quick strategies with you in a few moments about ways that you can re-engage students. Now, on the Thursday, the 18th of November, I'll be doing an e-learning, an online training event, which will be sharing my top tips to help and with that exact thing about engaging and managing behavior. Okay, engaging pupils so that actually we improve learning behavior over output and disruptive behaviors. The third course I'd like to bring to your attention is the Understanding Autism. Now, this is on Monday, the 24th of November. And again, I'm going to share some top tips about autism coming up in a few moments on this webinar. But the course will help you to understand autism, to recognize the characteristics, and then, of course, to build a wealth of strategies and ideas that will support you in your education. In every classroom, there are normally between 4 and 5 children in a class of 30. There are between 4 and 5, which is 20+% of pupils that present with autistic tendencies. So this particular course will really be able to support and drive home some of those great ideas and some strategies to make pupils with autism successful. I also have on how to adapt teaching to include every student, and this is coming up on Thursday, the 27th of November. Gosh, I've got a very, very busy November. This is about adaptive teaching, how actually the curriculum says X and you have to deliver it through using 3 or 4 different methods. So we will really start to explore in this course ways that we can adapt our teaching and the education and unlock every student's potential. This is helping you to understand the spectrum or the plethora of needs that are coming through in classrooms. And this one is not till January, so you have to wait for this one. This might be a nice Christmas present to yourself, perhaps. But this particular course will really explore strategies and ideas that will give you more confidence as a practitioner to deliver education in your classrooms. I then have a final course on the 27th of January, emotional regulation and being ready to engage in learning. We cannot we can't help pupils if we don't understand what's going on for them in their mind. When they're emotionally regulated, they'll be more successful in their learning. It's very difficult when we look at the Maslow's hierarchy of need. At the very, very base of what Maslow is saying, it is really important that we build upon those real basics before we start to have further functionality. Okay, so I'm hoping that the course, the webinar so far is not breaking. Aurora, please jump in if the course is, as I'm talking, if the live stream is breaking up a little bit. I'll continue unless I hear otherwise. Okay, now finally, just very quick mention, I've got 2 leadership courses as well, one in both in November. One is about being an aspirational leader and one is about surviving as a subject leader. So these are 2 other courses that you may wish to find out a bit more. Again, information can be found on the Infinite Learning website, and Aurora has placed that link into the chat already. So it will appear again towards the end of the webinar. Okay, right. Let's start at the very beginning, shall we? Tell me, what do you love about being a teacher? Now, when we're looking at pedagogy, when we're looking at inspiring people in our classrooms, What is it that we love about it? Please put something into the chat, or feel free to turn your microphone off and um, share some ideas and some information. But what is it that you love about being a teacher? Let me give you a few examples of some of the things that I will often hear. So I often hear about seeing a difference, seeing pupils make progress in lessons. A fantastic one I heard once was about a child that didn't think they could to be able to. So this was a young lad that was unable, had a walking frame, was unable to physically move from one part of the classroom to the other, but was able on sports day to run. Now that is a really marvelous achievement. And when this particular person was thinking about what they love about being a teacher, it all came down to that. So please feel free to put anything into the chat that would really help what it is that you love about being a teacher. I like to ask this question is because sometimes we forget. We get so caught up in politics, bureaucracy, of this, of that, that actually we forget why we love doing what we do. Because we're certainly not doing it for the money, are we? No, we're doing it for those very things. Some great ideas that have come into the chat here. Interacting with students, curious questions that children come up with. Absolutely, Karen. Thinking about that, having that eureka moment when teaching those heavy topics, students gaining that confidence. Yes, I couldn't agree more with you. Younger students, their eagerness to learn, French as an MFL learn. Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, these are superb ideas. I'm absolutely delighted to read those. Those eureka moments are so powerful, especially if you're teaching a tricky subject that you've been pushing and pushing. Gosh, we're just not getting it. And then one day the strategy comes to you, and then wow, you go for it. Now, that is about including your pupils. That is that moment of inclusion and understanding the pupils that you work with. You know exactly how to stimulate their learning, how to stimulate their ideas and their interests. And I love that idea of curiosity as well, building in how to make pupils curious. That's a really hard thing to be able to do. And the best teachers make pupils curious, hungry for more, wanting to come back the next day to find out even more as they go. Okay, so Omar says about feeling students gaining new clues of topics, curious to dive deeper independently. Gosh, Omar, that is a fantastic thing to say. When they come to you and say, do you know, you inspired me yesterday in your lesson, sir, or ma'am, and I absolutely wanted to find out more. So I went to the library, I Googled it, I researched it a little bit more, and I've actually extended my thinking. That enrichment process really is super powerful. Okay, so with that in, have a think to when you were at school. Who was your favorite teacher and what did they do to make the cut? Now, when I say make the cut, I mean, why have you chosen them? What is it that is special? Maybe, why did you pick those teachers? You don't necessarily need to name them. You could just say Mrs. S or Mr. J or whoever. But what was it that your favorite teacher did to make you choose them? All right, let's see what ideas we've got. I can see some of you are typing. Okay, and whilst some of you are just giving me some of your feedback there, I am going to share with you why I would choose Mr. as my German teacher. And for him, I discovered him when I was about 14 or 15, and he was relentless. And that belief in us of you guys are going to do this, that challenge, that ability to push and push and push us further and further gave me the successful Deutsch. Ja, ich spreche Deutsch now. My German is probably my strongest language, although my heritage is Greek Cypriot. My German is by far stronger because he was relentless. He gave us opportunities to thinking, and I would learn more in his lesson once or twice a week than I would from some of my lessons over months of it. Okay, so my English teacher, Paula, just made me want to read, and you're still a reader today. So that real depth of inspiration, that's lovely to hear. I'm so pleased. Because it can go both ways, can't it? If someone puts you off a subject, it makes you think, well, I don't particularly want to learn from them. I, I don't want to learn Spanish anymore, for example, because that teacher has put me off. Now, the reason I like to build this into this webinar, the reason I want to bring this into you guys is because this is about pedagogy. This is about feeling included. And when a teacher gets us, when a teacher understands our thought processes, it helps us as educators to deliver. So whenever I will always go back to my German teacher, Mr. B, and I will remember his relentless, his challenge. And that helps me to craft and design my topics, helps me to craft and design my lessons when I'm thinking about the planning. Okay, what have we got here? English teacher, grade 5. She would use idioms. She wanted to get our attention. So memorable learning or sticky learning, sometimes we might call that. These are all fantastic tips building to your repertoire of inclusion, building to your repertoire of how to include every single pupil. Now, let's be honest, we've got to be passionate in what we're doing. So I will come back to this slide again. I think I've mentioned this in my last webinar. I know some of you may have joined me from previous, but you've got to ignite your power in the classroom. You've got to believe in yourself and show your students how inspirational you are. When you are functioning as inspirational, then funnily enough, your pupils decide, oops, your pupils want to be part of your lesson. It comes from those real ground roots. It comes from the heart. When you ignite your power in the classroom, it's a bit like being a superhero, but you've got to believe in yourself because you've got to thrive over survive in what you are doing. Now, I mean this with the greatest of respects, and I started my webinar last time with this. This is so, so, so important. Omar, I will certainly come to you in just a few moments. This is so, so important that your well-being and your resilience are the highest that they could be. Now, I'm delighted that in the chat function earlier, some of you were saying to me that you were a 10, you were a 9. Brilliant. That means you've got superb well-being and you're taking care. But to be a really effective leader, you've got to have a strong core and well-being, and I say a leader of education, a leader of learning. And we're all leaders, aren't we? When we're working, teaching, delivering our inspirational learning and education, we are leading young people through that. Now, resilient people know these three things. They know they have to choose what takes their attention. Okay, so if you want to be in that classroom, it's really difficult to not get distracted as you're delivering about bits and pieces that have happened in maybe your personal life, or gosh, you'd had a bit of a heated debate with a member of staff in the staff room this morning and it was over something really silly. But you need to choose what takes your attention. You then need to know that it happens, and you've got to be kind to yourself. So you have to make sure these three things are building your resilience. Resilient people. I've not put resilient teachers because at the end of the day, we're all human, aren't we? We're functioning, we're in classrooms, we're working with young people, but we need to instill these behaviors in ourselves and model this to our young people. Some days are going to be great, some days are going to be bad. And we have to get over that. If we want to be inclusive, if we want to be the best pedagogists, if there is such a word, but if we want to be this very, very high functioning educator, we need to have a really good grounding of ourselves. Very, very important that we get there. Okay, now Omar has said his history teacher and the way he presented his lessons in a very interesting way when he used to make us curious about new learning, being curious again. So we used to be longing to his next lesson. Absolutely, and that is exactly it, Omar. That's what for all of your young people in your lessons to be desperate to come back to your lesson. I can't wait to find out more. I want to be curious. I've done this. I want to explore further. Okay, now let's have a little look next at how we inspire and motivate our learners. I'm going to give you a few ideas now, a few top tips that might be of good use to you. And this particular course, this is the one that I'm delivering on the 3rd of November. This is about inspiring and motivating our learners and really bringing learning off the page. I like to call it my dynamic acronym. Now, the dynamic acronym, again, I'll share this with you on the training course. The dynamic acronym stands for 7 different ways that you can bring learning alive. I'll give you a clue. The Y on the dynamic stands for yawn free. In other words, make learning relevant. Now, this is a lesson I have the joy and the pleasure of working with lots of schools and improving them. And I do learning walks and I carry out with their leaders. I go to see all sorts of lessons. And I was really interested in this particular lesson. So this is a lesson in the UK, which, oh, excuse me, which is frankly embarrassing. That's how I described it. Now, that sounds a bit harsh, but this lesson, it was a year 2 lesson. And the young people were asked to read the measurements from this. The reason I call it embarrassing is because actually it's lazy. This is a teacher that couldn't really be bothered, went on to Google Images, typed in measuring activity, printed off a sheet, and you can see it's blurry because the image quality is so poor. And what I want to be able to do is to give teachers and educators some ideas where actually worksheets become obsolete. There are other ways of learning, so we don't always have to focus and rely on a worksheet. Now, if I was looking at reading a tape measure on here, I certainly wouldn't be teaching inches because in the UK we don't teach imperial measures anymore. We only teach the metric system. So first of all, the subject knowledge is wrong. What other ways might we do to bring this learning alive? Now, year 2, grade 2, these pupils are 5 and 6 years old. Some of them are discovering centimeters for the first time. Some of them are discovering millimeters for the first time. And as a teacher, I want to be able to challenge every single learner and include them all in my lesson. If I give them this, it is not yawn free. It is actually really rather irrelevant to their daily life. So, oh, I can see that we've got a few suggestions coming through in the box. The first thing that I would suggest is how about we give all of the pupils a ruler and we ask them to measure things in the classroom. Now, that might seem quite straightforward and quite simple. What you might like to say is that every pupil needs to find something that is 7 centimeters long. So they're now going to go around and they're going to be measuring things. They're practicing the skill of measuring. They're predicting, they're estimating to find what works, so on and so forth. Okay, we're going to use some, here we go. What have we got from my friend Kyron here? Oh, Kieran, I'm so apologize if I pronounced your name wrong. Use active learning first using non-standard measures. Great stuff. Who can find something larger than my hand span? Then we use the measure. Okay, brilliant idea. Brilliant, brilliant. So we're now encouraging the pupils to use the practice. They're going to be practicing using the skills of measuring. Far more exciting than this very boring worksheet. What you might like to do for the pupils who are maybe new to this or are struggling, as you might say, okay, find something, as Kieran says here, or Kyron, find something that is the length of your hand span, exactly. So the children are using the non-standard measures. For pupils that I want to really extend and challenge, I'm going to start now exploring millimeters with them, and I want them to find something that's 6.7 centimeters. So now they're going to be going around and finding it. It is a far more dynamic, exciting way of doing things. Okay, now with that in mind, here's just a few ideas for exciting learners, and I will explore these in much greater depth on the training event on the 3rd of November. But thinking about ways that you can excite learning. Now, children love fun facts. So if you're doing measures, you find the largest animal, the weight of the largest animal, maybe the elephant that had the longest trunk in the world. Maybe you could find who grew the heaviest pumpkin in the world. So really start to think about some fun facts to bring the learning alive. They are great ways to hook young people and students into your lesson, starting with something very, very wow, that wow moment. Okay, now I like to use sticky notes a lot as well in my learning. And okay, they can be expensive, and lots of schools don't like buying post-its and sticky notes, but the children absolutely love them. Now, if that's the case, you can always just chop up some coloured paper and ask the children to make notes and get the children to respond. When the learning is more dynamic and exciting, you will have much greater success for your students. Now, these are just some of the ideas that I will be sharing with you, but ultimately, the whole function and the whole purpose of the session is about not thinking worksheet, but thinking learning. Very, very inclusive learning that will delve around in loads of different strategies and ideas. All right, now I'll also be sharing with you in probably 3 or 4 of the courses, so different courses, my very famous cha-cha-cha. Keep things, functioning for what George and how I would think about. Now, the cha-cha-cha stands for children, choice, and challenge. When I'm doing lesson observations, when I'm working with pupils, when I'm planning my own lessons, I will always consider the cha-cha-cha. Now, what does this mean? Well, first of all, the first chart is about children. And within children, I'll go into this in more depth in my training events. But with children, I want to see that all children have been considered, all children are catered for. Very, very important that it's an inclusive environment where every child is engaged. So if I walk into a lesson and I'm looking for the first cha of the cha-cha-cha, I'm looking to see engagement from the children. The second one is choice. Learning, that the teachers have an opportunity to have some choice in their learning and their outputs. Again, I will explain this much further. And then finally, challenge. Challenge for all. Every single child in that lesson has been challenged, or certainly has access to challenge. That is my cha-cha-cha. And again, I explain this in a lot more detail to you. Let's think about relevance to daily life. So the act offering your young people, do they actually have relevance? Is there relevance to your learning, to their learning? Is it relevant to their daily life? And a bit like that tape I just showed you a few moments ago, it is really quite dull when measuring those lines on a piece of paper. But to actually bring learning alive, to have active learning can be really helpful. Now, on the screen here, I've got 1 in 4 women and 1 in 5 men. This statistic, number of people who still write a diary in the age of 40 to 45. So only 1 in 4 women at age 40 to 45 still write a diary, and the same with the men there. Now, if I then move that into the 20s, people that are in 20 to 25, it's actually 1 in 4,000 women still write a diary. Now, that is a significant jump because now social media will dictate otherwise. People have memories. People don't write diaries as much as they used to. Now, the reason I like to use this as relevance is because actually, when we think about it, we spend in the UK 3 weeks every year in a student's learning, writing diaries, learning how to write diaries. And actually, that's almost a waste of time. A school that I'm working with at the moment, they've got rid of their diary writing tasks, and they have introduced a whole new concept of life skills in their English lessons. So now what pupils are doing is they're learning how to write appropriate adverts to sell things on Vinted or eBay. They are learning how to respond to a TripAdvisor request or a TripAdvisor review. They are learning the safety of social media and how to adapt and so on and so forth. This is now giving relevance. It is actually learning that will be beneficial to pupils as they move forward through their learning, through their life. Okay, so we're going to start thinking a little bit about that as well, and that relevance with being fantastic educators. Now, if I ask you to draw me a scientist, I'm sure that you will probably draw a man in a white coat with grey fuzzy hair, a little bit like Einstein. Now, okay, that is a type of scientist, but as an educator, as someone that wants our pupils to grow up in the world that they now live in, I want to really break these stereotypes. I want us to start thinking about diversity. How are we giving our young people diverse opportunities to think about different genders, cultures, disabilities, race, family dynamics, etc., etc. We quite often refer to mummy and daddy, but actually, do we ever think about the young people that live with auntie? Or do we ever think about the young people that live with their grandmother, or so on and so forth? We need to be representing the world that surrounds us. Okay. So we're talking about scientists, making sure that we're not always just referring to white men. And we quite would often say, that actually let's have somebody with a hearing aid that is working in a field. Science doesn't have to just be in a science lab, does it? I remember when I was head teacher of a school, I invited some ballet dancers in for the young people, and I asked the children to draw what they thought they were going to be witnessing in the afternoon, and they all drew girls in tutus. When I actually welcomed my friend Raj and Derek into the room, Derek only has one leg and is the most beautiful dancer in the world, and it is male, of course. That was really quite difficult for the children to get their head around. They were to be thinking about building in diversity across a whole range of situations. Okay, now the final part of my pedagogy is a little bit on vocabulary. When you are expanding the vocabulary of young people, when you are giving them new words, giving them that oracy, that opportunity to explore that little bit further, it starts to build their repertoire. It sparks their curious. So teaching pupils that are 4 years old the word photosynthesis. Wow, children love big words, don't they? It also adds progression to their learning as you build up. So start to design some thoughts about the types of vocabulary, and this is just for, if I'm a music teacher, where I would want my 4 and 5-year-olds, what types of vocabulary I would like to expose them to, and then so on and so forth as we go through the year groups. So start thinking about some of these words so that actually the pupils have access to really high quality vocabulary. Okay, now before I move on, please just let me all remind you about this particular course. And this one's coming up on the 18th of November. This is about how we engage students and manage their behavior. And my top tip comes from what's called IDR, which is ignore, distract, remove. And I would use this if I'm in a classroom where actually there's a young person or young people that I want to really engage in their learning. Now, let's just say that I'm delivering a lesson and there is a young person that is tapping a pencil. Now, it is really irritating. So I can ignore it to a certain point, and then I might distract them and I might say, oh, could you go and find me an orange pencil, please? Now, the tapping has stopped and off they've gone and they're now distracted. I can now continue to deliver. I've got to find something quite specific. They'll then bring that orange pencil to me and I'll say, oh, good. Can you just wait there a second? Let me finish this. Hold that pencil still. And then I'll be able to say, oh, I'm glad you gave me that orange pencil. Thank you. I must make some notes down. But orange helps my brain to work. So I've ignored and I've distracted. Now the behavior has stopped and they're now standing there next to me, listening, ready to engage in the next part of the learning. Now, if that doesn't work, then I would remove them. So I might say, oh, could you please take this to Mrs. Wingrove? Very important that these magic numbers here, she asked me for them this morning. I forgot all about it. Give that child a piece of paper. They are now removed from the situation. They've popped along. They've got a job. They're responsible. And that can help them to distract and remove will then help the rest of the class to function, and it gives you an opportunity to re-engage that pupil. Okay, now sometimes pupils can be really quite emotionally dysregulated, and when they are emotionally dysregulated, to make them ready and bring them back to engage them in their learning. Now this course is slightly more specific and it offers emotional regulation strategies, recognitions about feeling confident, and I based this on these three things of regulate, relate, and reason. So when you're regulated, when you support the regulation of a pupil, you start to relate with them, you understand, you become that understanding, you're now empowering them. Then once you've got some reason and some context, you can then reason their behavior. And this is a that will depth an understanding of what emotional regulation really is, with some top tips and strategies. We then, as I said earlier on, will start to have now in the schools a huge amount of young people that have autism, and we need to understand it as educators. So on the 24th of November, I'm doing a specific course about understanding autism, and we're going to talk about the spectrum of autism and the understanding that everyone is on the spectrum at some point. And I'm going to give you some tips. This is just one particular one where people with autism need to achieve one thing at a time. And this is a strategy that I use where you actually have 4 activities and the children then learn that they do the red activity, the orange, the green, and then the blue. And they work their way through the 4 activities. That's just one of the strategies that I might build into that. Now, throughout all of my courses, there are always freebies, and Aurora is fantastic at and this particular course, the one in January about empowering, including, and unlocking everybody's potential, this particular one will generate the additional needs and intervention format that I like to use about how all of these different interventions that we offer for our pupils with additional needs, how we coordinate and evaluate the impact of all of those individually. And this particular one will talk about adaptive teaching and give you the confidence so that you feel prepared to deliver education to a vast variety of young people. And that course is in January, so we've got ages to wait for that one, but certainly a very exciting one. I did mention earlier on that this particular one was hugely popular back in April when we ran this, and it was the Surviving as a Subject Leader. So this one's backed by popular demand. And I talk about my very famous, in my world, 5-point pinch, which is a monitoring tool. So if you're thinking, oh yeah, I'd quite like to understand my next part of my career, I'm going to be looking at becoming a subject leader or a department lead, then this would potentially be the course for you. If you're aspirational, I had a lot of people last time that were aspirational, and from somebody that came onto the course that was successful at interview last week. So, very, very exciting. Okay, so I will summarize the courses, but as a thank you gift for joining us today, Aurora will send out to you this little well-being pocket book. And what this is, it folds down into it's an A4 sheet that folds into a very small little book here. And this is about ways of taking care of yourself. Right at the beginning of the webinar, I said about you need to take good care of yourselves. When your well-being is strong, it will help you to be inspirational in the classroom. So this little pocket book will be coming to you for everybody that's signed up, along with the link for this webinar. So here is the final summary of, whoops, did I jump some there? Of my courses, all to be found on the website. These are the first three. I've got the leadership ones as well, please remember. But teaching with confidence, this is the one where we're going to really delve in to pedagogy, to really understanding ways that we can make learning dynamic and bring about that wow and wonder that we all want to see in our classrooms. Then we then have the behavior management and the very specific understanding autism as well. All of the courses can be found in the link, which I'm sure gain into the chat function. But the Infinite website has a wealth of courses on them, and please do refer to them so that you are can have a look and see what's available to you. It is so important that as an educator you take time and that you take pride in your own professional development. Learning more, being hungry for more, is a wonderful, wonderful trait to have. Thank you, Aurora, for just placing into the chat function some of the direct link to all of the courses that I will be offering. Okay, so I'm coming to the end now of my webinar. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Please, whoops, do pop them into the chat function. These are the other three courses as well that I just wanted to double share with you. Adaptive teaching, including everybody in our teaching, and then emotional regulation. Mostly in November, but a handful there in January. Courses too in November as well. Okay, thank you everybody. No questions have come through. Delighted to be part of this afternoon. Please contact myself on LinkedIn through this here, or of course the wonderful Aurora, who will be delighted to answer any of your questions. All of the bookings go through Aurora at Infinite Learning, please. So I hope to see lots of you there. Feel free to share this webinar and the link with your colleagues. A delight and a wonder to be here today. Thank you so much, everyone. I'll hang around just in case anyone's got any questions for me. But otherwise, enjoy your evenings, and I will see you all very soon on one of these courses. Thank you and have a great day.